Welcome to the Contrarians, and tonight we are having yet another Dark Horse album episode. Tonight's victim, Iron Maiden's The X Factor. This is the first album with Blaze Bayley. The panel's here. We're ready to talk. Let's do it. Welcome to the Contrarians, and tonight we have a great panel. We've got John Clauser, a.k.a. Johnny Metal from My Music Corner. We've got Dan from Off the Charts, and we've got Butch, vocalist extraordinaire, and we are going to talk about The X Factor, the 10th studio album from Iron Maiden. Now, this is a Dark Horse episode. This record, universally, it's kind of questionable, but we've got a panel here, and we're going to talk about it, take our ratings out of 10, and actually see, is this a Dark Horse album? Because all we're trying to do here in the Contrarians is turn you on to stuff. So again, I want to welcome the panel, Johnny Metal, Dan, and Butch. How is everybody tonight? And you ready to talk some Iron Maiden?
Outstanding.
Very good. Cheers.
All right, let's do it. I'm going to start off with John Clauser, and we'll go to Dan and then Butch, and we'll zip around, and everybody just give their basic review, what you think, what you like, what you don't like, and I'll need your rating out of 10. And let's do it. All right, John, welcome to the show. Nice to see you.
Yeah, it's been a little while since I've been on the Contrarians. Anyway, wow, X Factor. So I had been off the Maiden train for about 5 years by the time this came out. I was already off by No Prayer of the Dying, unfortunately. So, when Bruce left the band and Blaze came on board, I mean, let's face it. We talked about this on My Music Corner. We did a show on temporary replacement singers. We did the Blaze Maiden area. We did Ripper Owens. We did Krabby Crew, and we did Bush Anthrax. And let's face it, folks, Blaze was not ever going to get the respect from the Maiden fans, except maybe a small pocket. That's just my opinion. You watch his last gig with Maiden, they're still throwing crap at him. So, and that's a shame, but that's just me. It's a shame because I thought Blaze had his own voice. He had his own unique style. And okay, so it's not a lot of galloping songs that you're used to expecting from Maiden. There's a lot of slow intros, a lot of moody bass intros. You got a lot of long songs, which pretty much become a staple throughout most of Maiden's albums by this point. Sign of the Cross is the album intro. That's the longest song on the album. It's 11 minutes. But you can still hear that song live. Bruce sings it and sings it quite well. It's like the song was tailor-made for Bruce, in my opinion. But I think Blaze does an admirable job here. I think it's a very strong song. Maybe it doesn't need to be 11 minutes long. I think you could probably edit this album down from 70 minutes down to about 50, and you could probably still get a decent album out of it. Mm-hmm. You do get a lot of atmosphere changes. Every song, you could tell that there's a movie or a book influence. Lord of the Flies, same thing. Man on the Edge also draws literary inspiration here. Lots of songs about war. So you have like Fortunes of War, Blood on the World's End, Edge of Darkness. Do you have songs about depression because Steve was going through a divorce at this time? So like songs like 2 a.m. maybe. Let me see, what was the other one that was kind of depression like? There was one that I can't think of which one it is. But yeah, you just got a lot of this kind of style, which you would see throughout each Maiden album from thenceforth. I think there's a lot of good stuff here. There's a lot of recycled riffs, maybe. I think there was one song, I think Edge of Darkness. I think that they even had a section, to me, reminded me of Hallowed Be Thy Name. To me, just a little bit. There's just some of those galloping rhythms and leads and stuff. For a Maiden album, it's really not all that bad. Is it top notch Maiden? No, I don't think they haven't had a top notch album for me really since Seventh Son. And I know that's probably going to anger a lot of people, but I
goodness.
struggled getting into a lot of the post Seventh Son stuff, but that's just me. I'll still give it a 7 though.
Okay. That works for me. Let me ask you a question. And I've also failed as a host. So for anyone tuning in, because I get all worked up. This was the 10th studio album. This was the first one with Blaze Bayley. And there's only 2 albums of Blaze. So that's what we're talking about. We're talking 1995. This record came out on EMI and CMC here in the States. That doesn't mean anything, but I should have mentioned that up front, but I'm just a monkey with fiber optic cable. So I always I fail every now and then. But I wanted to ask this to John Clauser because he has done a series on his channel. We will put the link down below so you can check out his channel. Please subscribe to John's channel, My Music Corner. It will change your life. Do you think this is a good question. Do you think that the X Factor sounds forced? Do you think the band was not fully engaged? I know you gave it a 7, but does it sound forced? Because you were mentioned that things are recycled to some degree.
Yeah, I think some of it was because I think Steve, again, with what Steve was going on with his personal life, you do not every, you have 5 songs that are at least co-written by Steve, Blaze, and Yannick, which is encouraging because you don't always get that many group co-writes like that in a Maiden album. So that's a good thing. No Dave Murray co-writes on this album, except
but isn't
for
that kind of odd though?
It is. I mean, well, no, not necessarily, because really Dave doesn't get a whole lot of co-writes on a lot of the songs, really. But sometimes you see his name pop up on something, but not even this time. I don't know. I think maybe this was a little bit forced. They were trying to make something work with Blaze to make it work for his style, and maybe it worked, maybe it didn't, and maybe for some folks, like I said, they weren't going to take it. They weren't going to give him the credit that he deserved.
Well, I'm going to ask this of everybody in the comments. Please let us know how you feel about this record. Did Blaze bring it? Do you like these 2 Blaze albums? I don't know. Let us know, because we will take a look. We will read them. We will respond, hopefully. We're awfully busy here on the Contrarians, so you never know. I'm just saying, please let us know. Let's keep this interactive. The whole point of this program is to keep you turned on to stuff. You know what I was going to say, John? I don't want to go on a tangent, but normally when you have like a new member like Blaze coming in, fresh blood, and he's a lot younger than they are, you would think that would have been way more inspirational, and it would have triggered that's just what I'm thinking. I mean, the panel, wouldn't you think that too? That having Blaze on here, young blood, let's really crank it down and deliver. Yeah. I don't know.
Should have.
But you still have Steve Harris as your leader.
Yeah,
I get it.
That's the thing, man. I mean, he's new and young blood to the band, but it's Iron Maiden, man. I mean, it's next to Metallica, the biggest fucking metal band in the world, and it's a lot of pressure that comes with that, and the fan base wants a certain thing, and so I think I don't know. I think it's tough to find you're always working with expectations versus what you want to do, and they've got to be. I think they paint themselves into a box sometimes.
What do you think I'm throwing this out to the panel? We're just talking music. That's what we do. Do you think Blaze was the right choice?
No.
I mean,
what do you think, Butch? John?
At the time, I thought it was. First of all, it made me scratch my head. I was a Wolfsbane fan, so I enjoyed what he did with them, and I thought, well, that's an odd pick considering the fact that his voice is a baritone and he's nothing like Bruce Dickinson. He can't hit high notes. If anyone that saw the band live knows that he struggled with the older stuff, and Steve Harris wouldn't key the songs to fit his voice better. So it was a weird fit. I mean, I think, from the perspective of if you're going to keep trying to play Maiden-esque stuff, I mean, you figure you want a guy that can hit those kind of notes. From that perspective, it's probably the wrong guy. I mean, it's tough following Bruce too as a front man. I mean, And then, I mean, Blaze, I thought when he first joined the band, I thought like, well, maybe they'll go back to having a little bit, of that raw kind of like energy from the first couple records, because his voice is more like a Diano, like would suit that era more, but they didn't, and they tried to like shoehorn that voice into traditional Maiden kind of stuff, and I don't know. I mean, in retrospect, obviously it didn't work. It was tough. People didn't want to accept it. People are tough sometimes if the singer coming in can't do what the guy before did. I mean, if he would have been able to do like what Bruce did in terms of hitting the notes on the old stuff, maybe it would have worked better. But, when you can't do that, when you can't bring the classics across, no matter how good the material is, it's tough to win over the fans because they're,
What do you
it's
think?
kind of like the opposite of what happened with Judas Priest, where he could sing the old songs great, but the new stuff that they did with Priest was terrible.
What do you think the retirement of Martin Birch had anything to do with it?
Maybe.
Because I mean, look at his track record. I'm just saying, we're switching up a lot on this record. Just throwing it out.
It couldn't have helped, but let's also look at the fact that No Prayer for the Dying and Fear the Dark were not great records. I mean, those records have some of the. I mean, I don't hate those records, but they also have like some of the worst songs Iron Maiden ever did, and they're confusing and, they didn't do well. So it's not like Martin saved either of those records.
Well,
I mean, they didn't do well here. They did much better overseas.
Well, right, John, what do you think?
I want to. Well, first, let's just talk about Blaze again for a second. Keep in mind, Steve wanted somebody that was nothing like Bruce or Paul per se. So he personally wanted somebody different, and obviously that was on him. As far as why No Prayer for the Dying and Fear of the Dark sounded bad, that's why. No Adrian. Not saying Silver and Gold is a great album, because even though I like it, but no Adrian. And that to me was why Fear of the Dark and No Prayer for the Dying didn't work for me. But that's just me personally. But yeah, this fell on Steve. He wanted somebody different. He got somebody different.
What do you think?
The joke is that apparently you have to be Brit to audition for Maiden, and people are like, so I guess Blaze Bayley was the only Brit that applied for this job at the time, because they're like, wasn't Ralph Sheepers, or was that no, that was Priest, right?
Yeah, Sheepers was Priest.
But they were, anyway, sure, he's different, Blaze, but to me, I don't put all the blame on him there.
Yeah.
But,
all right,
I mean,
cool.
you can hardly blame Blaze. I mean, if Iron Maiden comes to you and says, if you audition and then they come to you and say, hey, we want you to join the band, you're going to say, yeah.
Yeah.
It's not his fault at all.
Yeah, why wouldn't you?
No.
Yeah,
I mean, Butch, you didn't audition for him, did you?
Did you audition?
First of all, I didn't even know that I could even sing that well at that time, and B, I could never, ever, ever, ever do what. No, I didn't.
I'm just messing.
All right, cool. All right, I just throwing it out there.
Though. If they would have called me, I would have been willing to fall on my face.
I'm surprised you weren't on their Rolodex.
Yeah. If you heard me singing back at that time, you would know why.
Okay. All right. It sounds like a different show. We just should feature Butch on something. Talk about your catalog and the band's catalog. All right. Cool. Well, we're just throwing it out there. We're keeping it loose. We're talking about Iron Maiden pretty much, but I'm going to throw it. Okay. So first of all, we've got a 7 out of 10, which I don't think is too shabby. So, okay. All right. Let's throw it over to Dan from his channel Off the Charts. Please check out his channel, subscribe, leave a comment, leave a thumbs up, for crying out loud. He's trying to build an empire. So please, just like Johnny Metal, check out John's channel too. But Dan, what's your thoughts on this record? Tracks you like, what you don't like, and what's your rating out of 10?
There you go. So I don't know. This is the cover I prefer, but this was the original cover, which I do not like.
Looks like AC/DC.
It's too, well, for me, it's the Eddie's way too far. It's a lot of dead space.
Wasn't that to please the retailers?
Probably.
Yeah, because of the vivisection on the front.
Yeah.
I don't like to see half decaying people on an album cover, but that's just
but it's cooler than what was sold.
Right.
Okay, X Factor. So I actually did an episode today on my channel regarding Maiden because I was preparing for this episode, which was titled "The Does Every Maiden album suck since 1988?" And I think John will probably enjoy this.
Wow.
No, it was a question. So no prayer for me. Okay. Fear of the Dark, even worse. But you know what? When this came out, I was like, okay, there's something different. I was ready to give this a chance, like big time. So I went and bought it the day it came out. And do you guys remember like Maiden albums back in the 80s? There was what, 8 songs per album, 4 on each side. Wasn't that the perfect? Well, most, yeah. That was like the perfect amount of music, which was no filler, all killer. Basically.
Well, blame the CD era.
Oh yeah. This has 11 songs on it. Okay, so let's start. I'm going to start off with what I like. I like, or I should say, I love 3 songs off of this album, which is "Sign of the Cross," "Man on the Edge," and "Blood on the World's Hands." Okay, love. I'm a bass player, so I love that intro, the bass, and I saw. So that's the good stuff, and so here in Canada. After Seventh Son, No Prayer did not come to my hometown, but Fear of the Dark did. Now, just to show you how bad it was, like everybody else, we have arenas that sit 8 to 10,000 people. Fear of the Dark was beside the arena in the Red Barn, which has maybe 500 capacity here. Maybe 1,000 if I'm being generous, okay? So that's just how bad it was for Iron Maiden here in Canada. I don't know about you guys in the States, but then X Factor came out. We went to see them in Montreal, which was, it's a smaller arena, not like, and Quebec and Montreal love their metal. You ask anybody there, like whether you're good or bad, they'll go see you live. So we saw them at a smaller arena. And you know what? I effing loved it. Okay, I loved Blaze Bayley on stage. He was great. I didn't see any issues with the older songs. Everything worked. He was a great frontman. Okay. Then of course we're telling this to all our friends. Oh my God, he's actually good live. Then of course when Virtual 11 came out, we went to another town to see it, and it was terrible. I was like, I never felt so embarrassed in my life. But anyway, so the good stuff: Sign of the Cross, which again they still play live. Man on the Edge, which is a great Maiden song. Just we've heard it many times before. There's nothing really original about it, but it's a great song. But Blood on the World's Hands got to be the most original one. Now the bad. Everything else. And it feels to me like the music was recorded before they got Blaze Bayley in. I know it's not that, but it feels like it because his voice, especially on Fortunes of War, I've never heard somebody sing solo, and it's bad when you're listening to a song. You're like, did he make a mistake with his vocals? I don't know what the word is. Sorry, I'm French there, but I'm trying to, like, was there like a miss with his voice there? And you're listening to another song, like, oh, did he make a mistake there too? It's like in French, you faussé. He made a vocal,
like a crack.
Not a crack, yeah, but a false note, I guess, or a brown note on vocals.
The auto-tune wasn't turned on.
Pardon?
The auto-tune wasn't turned on.
Yeah. No shit. But it's almost like the music was recorded so the good stuff was, like I said, Son of the Cross, Man on the Edge, and it seems like that his type of vocals, Blaze Bayley, worked for those songs. But you listen to Fortunes of War, I'm like, wow. And you can hear his voice. And again, it's everybody that I know is like, oh, I loved Blaze in Wolfsbane. Now, I may be not really liking this album as much, but I don't, like I said, I think it's as good or bad as anything else that came from the Maiden camp from No Prayer until whatever they released to Senjutsu. To me, they're as good or bad, all those ones. So this one here, to me, whether it's Blaze on vocals, the music is, there's some great music on here. They're almost proggy at times, but of course this was the album where they really introduced those extra long intro nonsense, sometimes for a minute, sometimes even two. Lord of the Flies, I don't even know what that sound guitar is at the beginning. I really don't like that part.
Kind of reminds me of like a Deep Purple like riff.
Maybe it works with Deep Purple, but I've never heard Maiden with that guitar sound just for the song Lord of the Flies, and I was like, that's an odd sound, but whatever. Judgment of Heaven, that's a good chorus. And again, there's 11 songs on this. Like, I could have chopped off a good, let me do my math here, four to make it a good 8. And of course, why I like Virtual 11 better than this, not because of the song quality or the singer, it's because there's less songs. And that's my take on this. I gave it a chance. I was like, almost like, I'll pro Blaze. Oh, you got to check him out. You know, he's great live and all that, which wasn't the case for the album after that. Maiden was already on a sinking ship in Canada anyway, so this did not help at all. Like John said there, it's I know Steve Harris was going through some divorces at the time, because this album is really dark compared to the others. But yeah, it's this album. But again, everything going, and I like every album starting from No Prayer to whatever they did. I only like 3 or 4 songs per album now, as opposed to their early stuff where I liked everything that they did. So there you go. That's my rant. But I gave it all the chance I could, you know. But
all right, hold on.
Now my rating.
Yes, I need your rating.
4 out of 10.
Oh,
Damn.
Oh my. Okay.
But
All right.
all Maiden albums are 4 or 5s out of 10s, with one exception, from No Prayer until, to me anyway. Okay,
That's fine.
Maiden
It's all
used to be
good.
my top 10 band, like back in the 80s. They're not anymore, just because of what happened from No Prayer and on. To me, these albums are as good or as bad as all of them, like the later ones. So there you go.
Well,
4
Dan,
out
get
of
ready
10.
for all the hate mail, but that's on you, not on me.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, it's all about the discussion. We're here sitting here talking music. Really, the whole thing is this one of those Iron Maiden albums you need to pick up when we get to the end? So anyway, we got a 7, we got a 4. Such a good discussion. You guys are so good. All right, let's throw it over to Butch. Butch, what's your thoughts on the record, your rating, songs you like? Give us your mini review.
Well, like I said, when I first heard Blaze was joining the band, it was a head scratcher, but I thought, you know, it might be kind of cool. I don't think I bought it like right away, because I loved Maiden up through Seventh Son. I was very disappointed with No Prayer for the Dying, and I saw them on that tour here in Pittsburgh at the AJ Palumbo Center, and I thought they were pretty bad. I'd seen them on Power Slave, and they were incredible, and I saw them on the Somewhere in Time tour. They were amazing, and just something about them. Like, I didn't think Bruce was particularly good when I saw them, and I didn't like the record. So, and then Fear the Dark came out, and I loved Be Quicker, Be Dead right away. I loved that first single, and then we got the album, and the album was like, man, I love that song, and I loved Afraid to Shoot Strangers and the title track, and that was about it. Like, oh, Judas Be My Guide was great too. And over time, I've grown to like that one better than No Prayer, but I always like, by the time that this album came out, I really wasn't that interested in Maiden. I was listening to Typo Negative, and I was, you know, there were other bands like that I was listening to at the time. And I don't know, I just wasn't that geeked for it. When I finally did get it, I just I didn't get it. Like it was so like kind of like, not that I got anything against depressing stuff. I'm a big doom metal fan, but it had a vibe about it that I didn't like the way his voice sounded with the music. It didn't jive for me. I don't know. I guess I was hoping that some part of me was hoping they were going to like return to like shorter songs and like more like quicker, kind of like that, more like straightforward, kind of like gallopy kind of stuff. Instead, this was a more progressive thing they were starting to get into, and I don't have anything, it's a topic for another day, but I do appreciate that I love the stuff Maiden's done since this record, except for Virtual 11. But this album is one of those ones that I did like Sign of the Cross, like that one I did kind of like immediately, but nothing about this album really gripped me at the time. I thought the vocal sounded off in spots. His voice, I mean, Bruce, really, I mean, if you listen to, especially some of the live stuff, like Bruce is always just a little bit, off the key at times. And Blaze is like that too. It just didn't, you noticed it more with the way his voice is mixed in on this record. Like his voice is like out front a bit more. It's drier, and they don't like, it sounds more isolated. Like, it's not like they could have done some things production wise to make his voice sit in there better. I think would have been, double it up or put some more reverb or put some more effects on it or something. Like, I don't know, but so anyway, I do like I like Sign of the Cross. And I mean, just to go back to like the way this album did when it came out, I mean, it peaked at number 147 on the Billboard charts in the United States. I mean, that is a precipitous fall. I mean, Fear of the Dark went up to number 12 and then dropped, but this album like tanked bad. And they were playing clubs in the United States on this tour. They played a club that Priest did too on the Jugulator tour around this time. Like, they played a club called the Metropole in Pittsburgh that, I don't know, maybe held like 1,000 people, if that, maybe 500 or 600. I don't know the count, but it was a weird thing because Maiden was, I never would have thought in my lifetime that Iron Maiden, an arena band that would go from playing like 15, 20,000 seaters in the mid 80s to playing a club in the mid 90s. I mean, I know things were going off the rails in America. People were into grunge and alternative stuff and everything but, metal seemed to be, Metallica was the only metal band that really seemed to be, and Pantera. But it was a weird time for Maiden. I mean, the album didn't do well. The album didn't do great ever. It only certified in the UK, only won silver. They had 2 singles from the record. Man on the Edge went to number 10 in the UK, but and Lord of the Flies didn't chart anywhere. So anyway, I like Sign of the Cross a lot. Man on the Edge is cool. I kind of like it. That beginning has kind of like a little bit of a rainbow riff, kind of like a little bit of a rainbow vibe in the pacing of that song. Lord of the Flies, I'm not particularly fond of. Look for the Truth, The Aftermath are okay. I mean, I don't hate any of these songs now. Blood of the World's Hands is really cool. I think The Unbeliever is good. This is one of those records, I guess, that just had to grow on me. Like, I didn't own it I had it, I got rid of it. I didn't care about it for years. I used to do, when I would talk about Maiden, this and Virtual 11 were always at the bottom. I gave them both like 3s and 4s when I rated them in the past. And then I started getting curious, because every once in a while you got to go back and revisit some of this stuff. So I went back to this one and found, I'm like, holy shit, like, I think I like this record. Like, and I think I like it like a good bit compared to where I did. Like, I just needed some, I don't know, I just needed some time. It just wasn't the right time for me when it came out. And over the years, there's just something about it now that I appreciate more. The songs hit me better. I don't know. I mean, I like the dark, the dark vibe to it. I find it doesn't like affect me the way that it did then. I don't feel like the songs they're long, but it doesn't feel like they don't. I get, Virtual 11, man. Some of those songs, they really did the like the Angel the Gambler with the chorus thing, repeating it over and over and over again. Like,
I like that one.
Top about 5 minutes off.
Probably
that song.
the only one, but
man, I mean, I don't know, but yeah, I mean, at this point, like, I appreciate the record. I think it's a shame that, it's not a shame that Bruce came back. It's a shame that Blaze isn't appreciated more for what he did. I think he's a great singer. His solo records are killer if you listen to them. I mean, I guess when he's doing his thing, man, and it's tailored to him. Like I was saying earlier, I feel like Maiden, there's expectations when you're Maiden to be Maiden. And I think maybe had they, I don't know, taken it, gone like even more of a different path than they did, maybe things could have been different in terms of how the albums are viewed. I think time has gotten a little bit kinder to this record, in terms of people's opinions of it. Not so much Virtual 11, but I mean, at this point, for me, for this one, I'd probably give it a 7.5.
11.5. All right.
But
I
again,
can handle that.
I like the little bit more progressive, longer. I don't mind the longer songs. Like, I love the records they've done since Bruce came back, for the most part. You know, for me, the two worst records they did are No Prayer for the Dying and Virtual 11. This is, I like this record. I probably like this better than some of the stuff they've done since Bruce came back, and I like it better than, you know, the two that came before it.
Well, let me ask you this. So you think that do you think from the time this was released in 95 to now that this record is aged better? Is that part of it?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think it has. I just think, like, I see more. I think it. I'm just going by anecdotal proof from seeing what other people, when people talk about it online, or when I talk to people about it in person. That whereas in the past, you talk to people about these two records with Blaze, and they'd be like, "That album sucks," or "That's the worst thing they ever did." And now it's like people. I'm seeing like way different opinions about this stuff. I feel like a lot of people have gone back, reassessed it, and, you know, there's a more positive feeling towards it. I think the fact that Blaze has had like a good, you know, he's a likable guy.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, good singer. He's done good records. I think has caused, you know, some people to like, well, you know, how bad could those records have been? He's doing this stuff is good. Let's go back and listen to it again.
Well, let me throw this out to the panel. I'm just curious how you would take this. Let's say you look at the album as a whole. Forget that it's Iron Maiden. You've got Blaze singing, but this is a new band throwing something out here. You have no preconceived notions. You don't know anything about the past catalog. How would you look at it?
Even
I think I
worse
look at it similar.
Even worse?
to me. Sorry, Butch, I cut you off there.
Oh, no, sorry. I think I cut you off, Dan.
I'm just saying the only reason I gave this one a chance was because it was Maiden. So if you're telling me that it would not be Maiden or just whatever, there's something that bugs my ears about this album. The Virtual 11 a little bit less, but for me to go like, did he just, you know, make a false note? Did he make a false, like, I'm constantly thinking. But then I think that the music, I don't know. I personally, I would say, just to answer your question, Grant, it would have been worse. I probably would have not even have given it a chance had it not been on had it not have the Maiden name on it.
Gotcha. John, what would you think? What was your thoughts on that question?
Well, go ahead, Butch. Go ahead and finish
Butch,
yours.
anybody, one of you. I don't care.
I was still trying to put my thoughts together, so go ahead, Butch.
What would if this is a band, a new band, this is their debut album, get rid of that Iron Maiden name, and it's the Blaze Bayley project. Why would you look at it?
If you, I mean, you're coloring the question by saying it's that I knew who Blaze Bayley was. So let's just say it's a new band, period.
Okay, all right.
If I had heard Sign of the Cross first, I would have thought this song is pretty cool. I would have given the album a chance based on that. But at the time, like, if you look at what was the metal scene was like at that time, it was tough times, man. Like, it was hard times, like Dusty Rhodes said. I mean, there wasn't a lot of good traditional metal coming out at the time. Bands were changing. Bands were like either trying to fit in, or there were different kinds of, you know, there was stuff like, I was listening to Monster Magnet, I was listening to COC, I was listening to
it's still the grunge
Paradise
era.
Lost.
It's still like, grunge.
Well, I mean, that was what the popular stuff was, but in terms of like traditional metal, I mean, it was like drying up a little bit. There wasn't as much of it. You know, Trouble had gotten more. They brought more of their '70s influences in, and so it would have been, I think, this, you know, album for it, even though it's different from what they've done and it's a little bit darker, it's still Maiden, and so I think like that style, it's still like traditional metal. So I would have given it a chance.
Okay.
I don't know how I'd have myself and where I was at that time, but I probably still would have thought the same about it then in terms of quality, and then I probably would appreciate it more now.
All right.
Yeah, I think I probably would be the same way. You know, I was picking up all kinds of all kinds of stuff. Whether I was listening to it or not is another story. But it just, if it was good and it stuck to me, then that was a good sign. You know, I would play it a lot more. I didn't get X Factor back in the day, so I don't know how to compare that. But yeah, I probably, if I liked it then and it would have stuck, yeah, I probably would have given it a chance. But knowing me back then, a 70-minute album would probably not have stuck with me that quickly.
Yeah,
you're right.
For a debut.
It's too long.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole CD thing is and that's a whole thing we could get into, but that definitely hurt a ton of records because you get put in a weird spot because on one hand you feel, you know, some bands would be like, oh, I can fit, I don't have to argue with the other guys in the band, we'll just put it all out there.
Yeah.
And then once these products came out, like, and people were buying them, then they felt ripped off, like if you didn't give them, like, oh, now this album's only 35 minutes long. Well, guess what? That's how long the best records were in the 70s and into the 80s, 35, 40 minutes. So, but people were like feeling gypped if you didn't give them. So now bands have to, they feel stuck. They got to give them 70 minutes of stuff. And guess what? More isn't always more.
Can
and
we say
usually
Hot in
it's
the Shade?
bad.
Anybody want us to talk about Hot in the Shade? Yeesh.
Dude,
I was just thinking about that, actually.
I just talked about that record a couple of nights ago for another show. Kiss is
totally different topic, but
yeah,
too much,
top three bands in their worst record.
too much music in a CD that's not. You don't need that.
Okay, then X Factor is the Hot in the Shade for Maiden or Kiss or whatever.
Well,
but would you find
maybe
that?
So maybe it is.
But do you find his vocals on this album are he's like very like the output
processed?
Is very the volume.
Oh, the mix, a bad mix.
Oh, the mix is terrible on this album. I find.
You think he's low in the mix, Dan?
I think so.
See,
is it like Roger Daltrey on? Is it like Roger Daltrey on Quadrophenia, where Roger's vocals are very low in the mix? And Entwistle thought we need to remix this because the mix is horrible on Quadrophenia. You can't hear. Well, you can hear Roger Daltrey, but he's not quite. The instrumentation blows Daltrey away on that record.
See, especially
if you got Roger Daltrey, why would you bury him? I mean,
if you have Daltrey, why would you bury him? Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
I just find Blaze's vocals are mixed, especially when he sings in his low voice. Like you can't make it out. I don't know. There's many bad things from this one for me there, but
I think it's a question that Grant brought up earlier. I mean, Martin Birch versus Nigel Green and Steve producing.
Yeah, I mean, and let's look at this too from that perspective. Like, so you got Birch gone, you got Bruce Dickinson gone, and Adrian's been gone. Like, who's left to say anything to Steve Harris? You know, Steve's the total boss now.
Yeah,
it's like no one's gonna tell the new singer he's not gonna like come in and be like tell Steve why and what for. So the records are gonna sound the way Steve wants them to sound at that point.
It's kind of like when Yannick joined. That's when it kind of started going that. And then Adrian Smith left. It kind of went that way. I blame everything on Yannick. There you go.
Well, I don't know. Maybe Steve involved in the producing might not have been a good thing. It is what it is. We can't change history.
Like I said, it
is what it is.
There's 3 songs that I love on that album, but the rest just absolutely does nothing for me.
All right, I'm going to tally this one up. So we've got a 7, a 4, and a 7.5. So we get a 6.1. Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, on the Dark Horse episodes, if I'm looking at a 6.1, I'm going, well, is this a record that you need? Actually, I'm surprised it fared this well.
Yeah, because Martin gave it a 0, if I remember, in his book.
I think that was Virtual 11. I think that was Virtual 11. I think he gave this a 2.
X Factor gave it a 1 then, right?
1 or a 2 or something, yeah.
It was very, very low.
If you'd asked me even 6 years ago, I probably would have given it a 4. So, I mean, this album's like a revelation to me. The last
Martin gave it a 2.
Years.
Martin gave it a 2. That's what Wiki says. So
Well, this is what this says. By you gentlemen giving it an average of a 6.1,
Yeah,
we
2.
could round it up to a 6.2. It's 6.1666 for 1,000 sixes. I would say that probably the album has fared better now than it did back in the day. Maybe the time has passed. I mean, we're talking 1995. Maybe it's done some good for this record. Would this be a record? All right, I'm going to throw it out the panel because it's hard for me to make a determination when we're only at a 6.2. For anybody here listening to the show, I'm throwing this out to the panel. If you were going to recommend this record to anybody, would you recommend this record to anybody coming into Iron Maiden?
No.
Butch?
Brand new fan into Maiden, no, but I wouldn't.
I'm just saying. And I'm going to throw this out.
It's not. If you're going to bring someone into Maiden, it's going to be, for me, it's going to be the first 2, and then Power Slave and Number of the Beast, and
right.
Peace of Mind, the first 5.
All right, John, what's your choices?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily want to introduce them to this either, but I guess it also depends on what kind of stuff they like already.
Yes.
True.
And
everybody's different. Yeah.
If they like the kind of stuff that was brought forth on X Factor, then I'm like, well, maybe you might like this.
Okay.
It really would depend on the person and what they're already into.
I would encourage, if I introduce someone, I said, here's the first 5 Maiden records, come back to me in a couple of weeks, let me know what you think. If they came back and said, I love this, then I'd say, okay, go listen to Somewhere in Time, Seventh Son, and then skip and listen to X Factor. And then I'd recommend some of the later records, like Book of Souls.
So Dan, what would you recommend? No? Is that a no from you?
I would recommend from Number of the Beast up until Seventh Son, big time. And maybe Brave New World and Final Frontier. But apart from that, if I'm going to recommend the X Factor to somebody, they'll probably not want to be my friend anymore because they'll be like, what the hell is this?
I don't know. You can send all the hate mail down to Dan. He'll take care of all of it.
But I don't want to just pick on the X Factor, or I find every album I want to make it clear, I think they're either all as good or bad from No Prayer up until Senjutsu. To me, they're all one bad.
But are they really bad, though?
Again, I as a kid, maybe it's my age also. I don't pay attention
to it
as much anymore. But back then, I know every song of those earlier albums, like big time. This one, again, I can't. There's 3 or, if you're lucky, maybe 4 songs I like per album. And I've tried. Anyway, that's just my.
Well, based on everybody's. Okay, I have one more question to the panel because I'm fascinated by this. On Seventh Son, because everyone's pretty much mentioned that. What happened after? Why is Seventh Son the last great album?
John said it.
Because Adrian left.
Again.
Adrian left.
So Adrian had that much influence.
Adrian leaves. The band wants to go in more of a commercial, more mainstream, kind of get away from some of the proggy. Adrian doesn't quite go along with that. I think by this point, Bruce came out with Tattooed Millionaire by this point.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's gotten that solo bug and he kind of wants to do some more of that. So I kind of think that's where the train, Bruce wants to go solo and do his own thing for a little while.
Yeah, he's done his thing. We're talking, what year? Wait a minute. What year are we talking? Seventh Son came out. Was that 87?
That was about 88.
88.
I think Tattooed Millionaire was in between No Prayer and Fear of the Dark. Or was
somewhere in that. Yeah.
Or was it before No Prayer? I forget.
So I just wanted to throw it out there. Go ahead.
I think we need to remember something about Seventh Son too. This is not, I know in the UK it did really well, but that album was a flop in the United States at the time that it first came out. I mean, that record, people, when I was in high school, man, like, obviously, I mean, this was like our prime metal years. I was like 17 when that record came out. So all my buddies and I, that we were all listening to like the same bands, like Maiden, Priest, Metallica, Kiss, whoever. When that album came out, when Somewhere in Time came out, people were pissed off about the synth guitars and using keyboards, and that the songs were, Can I Play with Madness is super poppy. There was a lot of discontent going on to the point where Maiden was canceling shows. They were supposed to come and play in Bethlehem. They just played there on Somewhere in Time tour at a place called the Stabler Arena. Now this place only holds 6,000, I think. But I mean, they couldn't even sell enough tickets for Seven Sun. They had to cancel the show for a small place like that. I mean, it wasn't.
That's unheard of now, though.
Yeah.
That would never happen.
It's a record that over the years, like people have like realized, oh, this is a really good record, but it wasn't like universally loved at the time. It was like the nerdiest of the Maiden nerds thought it was cool. I mean, I liked it, but I'm just saying, like in general, like people were discontent with the band. That's why they started to.
It's I think it's half and half.
Like,
the Seven
like,
Sun
shit,
love.
this record's really good, which it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
There you go. I'm just throwing it out there. It's all about the conversation here in the Contrarians. We're talking
a lot of people. Yeah, a lot of people you ask, Seven Sun is either I love it or I don't like it. It was like kind of the beginning of the end. Here in Canada, for Seven Tour was opener Guns N' Roses, and they barely got 2,000 or 3,000 people in an arena here. So they said, "Oh, it's a good show," but there was hardly anybody there. I didn't see that one, but from people that told me, it was half full. If not even.
Half full. Can you imagine?
For Seven Sun. And then, of course, the Fear of the Dark was in a barn, like general admission barn. Like, I wish I was kidding, guys, but
it is what it is. These bands, they have a
bummed,
high point, they come down, they might have a resurgence.
Everybody goes through that, yeah.
So
everyone.
All right, cool. I appreciate. I just wanted to throw these questions out there. Keep it loose. We're having a discussion. We're trying to turn people onto this record, and we've got a 6.2. And I don't think the panel really would recommend this record. Only if you're a completist, and you're trying to fill that void in your Iron Maiden catalog. But, if you like what you've heard before, maybe you want to go out and check this out. And I really do want to hear from people in the comments. Do you like this record? What would you rate this out of 10? Because if we were live, I kind of wish we were live doing this, because we could take everybody in the chat, combine everybody's rating, and come up with well, I'm not saying you guys don't have a good rating, but when you can take everybody in the chat and include them, you might get a more accurate result. But
I think
everybody
it'd be closer to Dan's than
you think?
Jonathan.
I'd be very curious. That's all.
And there's probably people who are very, very passionate about the Blaze Bayley era.
Of course.
Very, very passionate.
I know people who love the Blaze Bayley era and the Tim Ripper Owens era I'm like, really? That's your favorite era of everything? Or the Tony Martin era for Black Sabbath?
Sure,
it's their
same
favorites.
thing.
Robbie Crew.
And I think it has a lot to do with when you come into a band.
Yep.
What is your gateway drug, so to speak? And the kids or the people that came into the Blaze Bayley era, they like that. Your mileage may vary, but based on our ranking, I mean, it's okay. It's not bad. It's a so-so record. I don't know. Let us know in the chat. Anybody else have anything to add? What's that?
I said they'll tell you. Maiden fans are not one to
That's
hold
what I'm
back.
saying, Dan. They're going to burn crosses in your yard, and I don't know what they're going to do.
Just subscribe and tell me off. There you go. How's that for a deal?
Grant, man, you'd be surprised like how many people, like if you've watched the message boards and comments, like when these later era records have come out since Brave New World, like I think a lot of people like that one, but since then, like, man, the last two records have just been getting like people either love them, like I'm in that camp, or they have ripped them. So you'd be surprised. Like Dan might get a lot of love.
Dan might get love. All I'm going to say to the audience is don't burn his house down. Don't burn crosses in his yard. Please leave Dan be. Just make a comment. We're all here talking music. I'm just saying.
The only thing I'm going to add is that to me, these latter Maiden albums have been an absolute chore to get through because they're
you guys are all soft.
long.
These Butch, we should just get rid of these two guys and just talk. I don't know, man. What's going on?
Get off my yard.
Get off my yard. You know what, John? I told Martin that the other day. I said, Martin, you sound like get off my yard. Come on. Come on, Martin. Come on. Grumpy old man. All right. Well, anyway, so we gave it a 6.2. Leave us your thoughts in the comments. If you'd like to be on these panels, heck, anybody could come on. Let us know. We have a Patreon. We'd love for you to join. There's a lot of interesting conversations over there. We have a Ko-fi. Buy us a pint or a cup of coffee. We'd love that. We also love donations because, well, who doesn't like donations? We do this because we want to turn you on to stuff and talk music. So based on that, oh yeah, and we've got merch. Buy yourself a shirt. Come on, buy a shirt, support the channel. If you like what we're doing, give us a little bit of support, though we will still go on and do what we do, but we would appreciate it. So, gentlemen, Johnny Metal, we've got Dan off the charts, and Butch. I want to thank you, gentlemen, for coming on. It was a fun discussion. It's all about the discussion. That's all I'm going to say. So, gentlemen, if I don't see you, have a good weekend. We will see you on the next show, and keep it real. And keep it clean.
Yes.
Rock forever.
Great being with all
Rock
of you.
forever. Here, I'll give you one of these.
Right.
Is it going to do it? There. Ah, oh. All
Oh,
right.
wow,
Johnny,
that's cool.
we'll see you.
How come mine doesn't do that?
That's because, Dan, I'm cool.
Bullshit.
Butch, I'm cool. All right, we'll see you. Have a good one.